Welcome to Connecting Dots, a laser-focused, quick-fire interview on food and the economy with international experts where we seek answers to questions all of us should be asking. I'm Ajay Jakhar, Chairman Bharat Krishik Samaj of Farmers Forum India, as well as Vice Chair of Action Track 2, Shift to Sustainable Consumption Patterns at the UN Food System Summit. I'm on my farm at the moment, and we are talking to Dr. Rathin Roy. And Dr. Rathin Roy is a star economist. Today is the Managing Director, Research and Policy at IDC. Having held numerous positions across the globe, is an influencer of economic policy and narratives in India and abroad. Thank you, Dr. Roy, for joining us today.
Thank you.
For farmers to get better farm gate prices and prosperity, the economy has to be thriving. So today we focus on questions on the economy to sift the wheat from the chaff. So we request you to please explain in very simple words for our viewers are able to understand. The cost of fuel is strangling the common man and farmers. And I will give an example from my farm in the village itself. The cost of diesel today is around 100 rupees. 2 years ago, when farmers like myself sent one truckload of citrus or carrots to Bangalore, 2 years ago, it cost 70,000 rupees. Last year, it cost 1,15,000 rupees. And for this winter, truckers are quoting 1,40,000 rupees per trip, which if you calculate comes to around 3 rupees per kg of fruit or vegetable per truckload extra that consumers will also have to pay. So what would you suggest to the government or think about these high taxes on fuel today?
I have, Ajay, a very unpopular position on this. I am in favor of high taxes on fuel. Let me take your citrus example. Citrus is not consumed by the common man. It's an item of what we economists call discretionary consumption. That is, it's not like dal or chawal or, bananas. So, if orange juice becomes more expensive or Musambi juice or Kiddu juice becomes more expensive, then three things can happen. One is that the Bangalore person says, I like Kiddu so much, I'm going to pay for it double. Then you're okay. Second is that you say, okay, let's split the difference. I'll take a little less profit margin and you pay some higher price, but not full. Okay. Third is he or she consumes less, or which is the same thing for me as an economist. They stop buying from Punjab and they start growing quinoa near Bangalore so that the truck price goes down. That's a very positive development from the point of view of sustainability anyway. So only if the price rising as a consequence of the fuel tax results in a fall in demand, is there a problem? I don't know whether you have seen a fall in demand, but I'll tell you something about petrol. Number of trips that people are making to the malls, whenever petrol prices have gone up, have not gone down by even one trip. Okay. Demand for taxis, demand for trucks, demand for transportation has not gone down. So prices are being absorbed without output falling. So that's fine. Maybe people are consuming fewer plums because they like quinoa so much. Or they might consume less quinoa and more plums. Who cares? From an economist point of view. Okay. Point is that the common man is not being hit. High prices are not resulting in lower demand. If they are resulting in lower demand, then we have to ask, is that lower demand meaning that less overall output, or are people buying less quinoa and more, let's say, stuff that's grown near Bangalore, more grapes? Or is there relocation of production from Punjab to Bangalore? All those things don't matter if they happen. They're good things, in fact. Right? What you're trying to make more expensive here is the price of a fossil fuel. And if the impact of that is anything other than a radical fall in demand without any substitution for some other product which is produced closer to home, that's fine.
So what I understand is that you're saying that demand does not get impacted of food when prices rise because of tax on fuel. But as a farmer, what I see is that people will eat less nutritious food and shift to cereals instead. But that's a different story. What is the state of Indian economy today? Now that the rains have been delayed, the sowing has been impacted. And what is the most likely scenario that you see of the Indian economy for the next few years? How do you foresee in the next 3-4 years?
That depends on whether we change the way we deal with the problem. I would say the patient is in something what I would call stage 1 cancer. And stage 1 has been going on for a long time. This is not a malignant cancer. India is an extremely resilient economy. But none of the economic engines are firing. With the pandemic, the one thing that did happen is that agriculture managed to sustain itself. But in the long term, we have been treating agriculture like a bargain sector. You can't go on, two things you can't go on tolerating. One is go on producing 3% growth, 4% growth, and letting the sector do what it likes, neither helping it nor harming it. Second is create such a regime of subsidies and minimum support prices, etc., without reference to a benchmark which you use for industry or for any other activity, which is what price quantity combination allows agriculture to make a 15% profit, right? After allowing for borrowing. After all, you have to borrow to run a business. And agriculture is no different. That is nothing immoral about borrowing in agriculture from producing rubber toys, right? And if the rubber toy manufacturer is entitled to make 15% profit, so is the farmer. But in India, to calculate the unit cost, I've failed, of a unit of agricultural output, any output, without subsidy, and then to calculate the price at which it can be sold at 15% profit, the total output, is impossible because there's so much neglect, accompanied by intervention in the economy. The government is intervening on what you produce, where you produce it, how much you produce, who you sell to, how you process it, which cold chain, no cold chain, middleman, mandi, adhatya, no mandi, no adhatya. Then when you take away the formal state, then the relationship, because of electoral politics between the middleman, agricultural powers, and the informal state, that assumes a second panoply of regulations on the farmer. And all this is ignored by economists because they say, agriculture is only 13-14% of GDP. But the sector employs 1/3, 2/3 people. It is also what I would call the default sector, which we saw during the pandemic. Because Indians are not gainfully employed. Let's face it. Every Indian is not a coder. If you think coders are gainfully employed, they're going and doing some informal work in the city. कहीं माल उठा रहे हैं, कभी ये कर रहे हैं. सब कुछ ठप हो गया जैसे पैंडेमिक में हुआ, तो वापस जाते हैं, फिर लैंड पे ही तो आते हैं.
That's right.
There has been no attempt by anybody to deal with the problem of producing a sustainable, profitable agriculture. To the question that economists traditionally say, there are too many people working in agriculture. How do you know? What is too many? You're going by the English model or the European model. English and European model is based on two things. It is based on creating theme parks in rural areas, where essentially, there are nice places where your farm is. I'm sure it's very nice, but it's uncomfortable. There are ants, there are snakes, water is an issue. But if you go to a rural England, it's full of expensive hotels, nice, organic, everything is beautiful, nice sunshine. And then you have heavy subsidy to maintain that, plus a large amount of international migrant labor that comes in at specific points like strawberry picking, etc. And that is how the model is working for a very small proportion of the population. That is not the model in which, forget India, works, or even a country like Brazil works. So I think the challenge with the economy is that when things are not looking up in terms of India becoming China, it's not going to become China, or India even becoming South Korea. The reality that agriculture and the food sector are going to remain a very important part of the economy, both in terms of, at least in terms of employment and as a bargain sector, is something that should form the bedrock of our economic strategy going forward. Not to treat agriculture as something that is a bad thing that needs to be minimized, either in terms of employment on it or not. Employment on it will be as much as the sector is profitable. The more profitable the sector, if more people are employed, what is wrong with that? If it is not so profitable with too many people, then you can reduce it. But as long as it becomes the bargain sector for insecurity in industry and services, this model of shift people to manufacturing and services will not work. That's the big lesson we have learned from the pandemic. So we better go back to thinking about agriculture and the rural sector much more systematically, commercially, and seriously than we have been doing in the past. If we are going to make sure that this stage 1 cancer that the economy is in does not metastasize, to use a medical term, and become a stage 2, stage 3 by even destroying, the bargain sector or the default sector, which is agriculture.
So to this question of, you just stated that the economy is in a really bad state. And how does the economy move forward? Because as farmers, we think that we are able to produce whatever the market demands. We are able to fulfill India's requirement. But only if the economy is doing well, employment is being generated, will people be able to pay more for our produce, and we'll get better farm gate prices. So what would be your suggestions to the government so that the economy is thriving again and gainful employment is being generated off farms
My
also?
suggestion will be first to the farmers. You are not communists. आप लोगों ने देश का ठेका नहीं ले रखा है. So stop thinking about the good of the nation. Nobody else is doing that. And nobody else should also. Start thinking about the good of yourselves as farmers and ask how much output can you produce at a price that makes you a profit. And ask for policies that allow you to sell the output you can sell at prices that make you a profit. That in itself will be a great service to India, because that will give me a robust agricultural sector. And it is not true that when prices go up, when incomes in other sectors go up, necessarily your farm gate prices will improve. Why will they improve? If you are producing more and I can buy it for the same price as I bought before, just because my income is going up, I'm not going to pay you more. Per capita income of India has tripled, quadrupled since 1960, more than that. I'm sure you're a vegetarian, but I know the price of chicken. Price of chicken has gone down by 500% since then. Kaise hua? People are not willing to pay more for chicken. So the best thing to do is watch your markets and try and sell your product at a price that is as profitable as you can make it. If you are expecting subsidy to do that, then it's time to close your business and let the country go to hell. Then if the country chooses to produce in India as we did with the Green Revolution, then we will subsidize you in the national interest. You're not doing anybody a favor by accepting that subsidy. So my solution is for everyone to look at their own ability to do things profitably without subsidy. Agriculture is one sector. I'll just close by 4 others, because the other thing you obviously want is employment, increased employment and loss of equality. First is food and agriculture, not just food, sorry. Output from the primary sector. And I've told you what we need to do there. We need to just make sure that we get rid of subsidies and decide how large that sector should be, as long as it produces a 15% profit, including returns on loans and all that. No more suicides and no more default. You take a loan, you pay it back, and you make 15% profit after that. That's a big job. That's a structural change. We'll have to do it. Second area is textiles. We make 2,000 rupee shirts in India. We import 400 rupee shirts from Bangladesh and Vietnam. Why? Because the place where we can make those 400 rupee shirts is not South India or Haryana, where labor is expensive. It is UP and Bihar. But in UP and Bihar, we don't have the ecosystem where people are willing to set up these high volume, low value industries. Khel alag hai na? When you make a 2,000 rupee shirt, then your profit margin is about, let's say, 400 to 500 rupees. When you make a 400 rupee shirt, your profit margin is 20, 40 rupees. So you have to make many more 400 rupee shirts. It's a volume game. People are not willing to do that yet. So we have to crack that problem. We have to bring production to, and by the way, I'll say something about agriculture there also, to areas where the people who produce things are also able to consume them. Agriculture, that is not happening. You're sitting in Punjab and producing quinoas. Dryland agriculture doesn't work. We are using the railway system to do something ridiculous. We are transporting millions of people and millions of tons of agricultural produce up and down the country like gunchakkars. What kind of productivity will you get? What kind of economy will you get at this state? So we have to start producing and consuming more locally, and therefore using resources more sustainably in that local consumption, so that frugal production results in profitable production. And that is as true of agriculture as of textiles. Third area is low-cost housing. In India, it's like hotels and houses, same thing. Either you live in a shit house or you live in a palace. Look at your village. Between your house and the village, and let's say somebody who is halfway down your income level, even in a rich area like Punjab, there's a huge difference in quality. Think about one UP and Bihar, between the rich farmer and the laborer, right? So we have to start thinking about affordable housing across India, 4, 5, 6 lakhs. That is where the cement and steel has to go. And employment is there. No artificial intelligence robots are going to build low-cost housing, profitable, sustainable agriculture, or cheap textiles, right? Finally, two things that everybody wants, and everybody wants at affordable prices: health, education. These must be produced without subsidy. If these 5 things account for 70% of India's growth and output, and then exports account for another 10, and then luxuries and perfume and all these nice things air travel account for another 20, we will be on a sustainable growth path. At the moment, we are 500 to 700 million Indians are producing at very low wages, at very low profits for 150 million Indians to enjoy. That has to change to the same number producing for 300, 400 million Indians, which means you have to change what is produced to meet what is consumed profitably. 5 things that for top half of the population, forget the very poor, the top half want. They want food at affordable prices, they want textiles, they want health, they want education, and they want a house. Bas. That will get your growth sustained.
Dr. Roy, the government, when it came to power 7 years ago, said they promised less government and market-driven approach. You think that is a reality today?
No.
You don't think that's a reality?
No.
Okay, so the government has not done well there.
The government has not pursued a market-driven approach. I don't know what the government said when they came.
Okay.
But they have certainly not pursued a market-driven approach.
To control inflation, government has imposed stockholding limits. Now, this is as recent as last week. Stockholding limits, even for pulses, which have been selling below the minimum support price levels, like for chana or gram. Even import duties have been removed to subdue farm gate prices. RBI and the government's obsession with inflation normally hurts farmers first and most. Should governments increase the money supply into the market or keep giving bank guarantees? So can you, this is the second last question, can you just elaborate on this infatuation with inflation? I mean,
no, it's important to control inflation. The question is, do you control inflation by controlling food inflation? And why are you trying to control food inflation? I mean, there's another thing that the government does. The moment domestic prices go above a certain level, they open up imports. This is an inconsistent, schizophrenic, and foolish policy. You have to get your policy parameters clear. One, I can say to you, I can say, Mr. Jakhar, I don't give a damn about you and your kidney. You either produce competitively with the world or you don't, in which case I allow free imports. Or I say, Mr. Jakhar, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. India will produce in India for Indians. What's up? Then I ban all imports and I produce for India, whatever the cost, right? And I provide subsidies to consumers, whatever the cost. You're doing one thing on Tuesday and one thing on Thursday, not just this government. Sometimes you're saying we will import, sometimes you're saying we will ban imports. And this is because you're playing political games as usual by keeping everybody mildly dissatisfied. It's like running a harem, a harem of a sultan running a harem of multiple wives. He can't satisfy all the wives. So he partially satisfies each of them, leaving all of them mildly dissatisfied, but keeping equilibrium. So you're dissatisfied because these limits have been put. Then they will relax the limits a little bit. Then you will fight about minimum price. The fundamental question that you are completely at the mercy of the government, and so is the consumer of food through our subsidy system. That fundamental question neither you ask nor the consumer asks. And so the government is doing political management of these two constituencies. And that is what is happening. In terms of the logic of doing this, in terms of whether it is good for the country, no. It is so profoundly stupid, it cannot possibly be good for the country. But it is politically workable, and therefore it is being done.
What you're implying is that there is, not only is the policy wrong, but there's no consistency in that policy. It's a political economy and a political decision.
The inconsistency of the economic policy is politically consistent because both farmers and consumers are willing to bargain at this petty level with government, much like wives in the harem bargain with the sultan for the sultan's favors.
That will make a nice statement. So to the last question, Dr. Roy, USA has given a per capita stimulus of around $25,000 per person. India is at a level of around $2 per capita. Many world economies like China have rebounded. How optimistic are you about the Indian economy rebounding and achieving the $5 trillion mark that the government promised by 2024, I guess?
I am not a communist.
Thank God for that.
I don't understand all this $3 trillion, $2 trillion. These are targets that Stalin would set. I want India to become a more prosperous country. And I want that prosperity to be shared across Indian regions, across wherever people work, across whatever they do. Whether that is achieved by a $3 trillion economy or $2 trillion economy, some accountant can do. Main muneem nahi. Right? What we want is prosperity. Now you have to ask, is prosperity going up? And the answer is profoundly no. Our growth rate has collapsed over the last 7 years. Even before the pandemic, it was the lowest growth rate since 2016. The inequality has risen very sharply. After the pandemic, we've had a profit-led recovery, which means wages have suffered and even returns to capital have suffered. People are neither getting money from selling their labor, nor by putting money in the bank and earning a return, right? Agriculture, I don't need to tell you how unstable and how squeezed the situation is. Who is making money? The top 80 listed companies are making money. Great. Stock market is therefore booming. Great. Is that the India that I want to see? Whether $2 trillion or $10 trillion? No. Is the government doing something about it? No. Is the government the only agency responsible for doing something about it? No. Will people continue to elect governments that follow a part of such inequity? Probably yes. Because the bargain in this country is not about the economy. And I'll close by saying that's a very good example of your sector, Ajay. You're the greatest farm leader of India for a long time now, Chaudhry Charan Singh. I think you once told me that he never went for a Jat function.
Yes.
Because his identity was that of a farmer.
That's
you have lost that identity in agriculture. You are Jats, you are Thakurs, you are Marathas, you are upper caste Hindus. You will never be able to gain economic prosperity because the government knows it can bargain you down. The same is true for many other sections of India. So I'd say this is a social problem that India has, that the lack of aspiration to invest in egalitarian, collective economic transformation across all sectors is creating what I call a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game is you win, I lose. And we are in that bargaining of you win, I lose, and governments win and lose elections on that basis. So even if the economy tanks, it doesn't mean that political fortunes necessarily of the government will be any worse. And therefore, I'm afraid India collectively as a country is in for some very difficult choices going forward, political and social ones. The old political and social choices are not consistent with future economic prosperity. And unless those choices change, I'm afraid we are going to a very dark place.
Wow. So those are bold statements. And thank you so much for taking time out to join us today for this interview. And I look forward to meeting you in Delhi when you are meeting people. And thank you so much. Thank you once again. Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out from your busy, precious schedule. Thank you so much, Dr. Roy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.